It's no secret that Anthony Joshua has always been wildly hyped by the British media, and in recent years, after suffering 3 losses, 2 of them back-to-back, he was once again rebranded as a stoic destroyer that was out for revenge, complete with blank stares into nothingness as the Godfather theme song plays in the background.
Yo, that's corny, right?
With his losses to Alexander Usyk forgiven and excused, and his utter decimation at the chubby little hands of Andy Ruiz completely forgotten. But here's the thing about reality: no matter how much you try to deny it, it doesn't make it any less real. And last week, Daniel Dubois for the 4th time woke everyone up to the reality that Anthony Joshua isn't and has never been the elite boxer that he was hyped up to be.
All he does is that step back and bang, or step back and bang.
And I'm not saying he wasn't good, and at points maybe even very good, but he just never had that extra gear or elite level of skill that all great champions possess. The amazing presentation and the flash of all of his knockouts never had the needed substance behind it. He had the exterior of a rocket, but only had an airplane engine. And in this video, I'll highlight some key points in his career to point out the flaws in his game and his mentality to help drive this point home. But before we go there, let's talk about what this modern era of heavyweight boxing even is. When people speak about the golden age of heavyweights in boxing, they usually point to a decade between the mid-70s and the mid-80s with legendary heavyweights like Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, and Larry Holmes. These were fighters that were mobile with great fundamentals, head movement, and footwork. Most of them fought with the type of ferocity that conveyed that they were willing to lose their life in the middle of that ring.
When you see him and I, it's always to be a fight. That's the problem.
I'm so tired, I don't want to do nothing. I want to rest for 1 week. My hips are sore, my arms are sore, my sides are sore.
But when we contrast the footage from back then with modern boxing, what really stands out is how small they were compared to the average heavyweight of today. The typical size of a heavyweight boxer in the 1970s was 6'2" and 215 pounds. Today that has exploded to 6'6" and 245 pounds, a 4-inch and 30-pound difference. And even someone that was considered to be a power-punching giant in the 70s like George Foreman was only 220 pounds at 6'4". To put that into context, Alexander Usyk, a former cruiserweight, recently weighed in at 233 pounds against Tyson Fury. And Usyk is considered to be very small for the division, a fact that Tyson Fury highlighted several times in the lead-up to their fight.
Middleweight. You say you want the WBC. It is held by gypsies. It's held by the Gypsy King. And it's held tightly, grasped tight. And all road leads to a 7-foot behemoth that will absolutely destroy you, middleweight. Middleweight, you will get smashed to bits. I'm a 7-foot 20-stone behemoth, and I will destroy you, middleweight.
Come on, Usyk! Come on, Usyk! Hey, look at Usyk! Look at Usyk going, my boy! Get him! Come on, Usyk, you little shit! Ah!
And ironically enough, Usyk dominates the modern heavyweights with skill, speed, and tenacity that was brought over from the lower weight classes. And in my opinion, that is not a coincidence, as the skill of heavyweight boxing has regressed greatly since the golden age of the 1970s and 80s. Over the years, the focus shifted from prowess and grit to intangibles like size and power. We saw an example of that recently with Francis Ngannou, who, while extremely physically talented and well prepared, was an absolute novice in boxing, yet was able to arguably beat Tyson Fury, who at the time was considered to be the #1 heavyweight in the world. And as much of a genetic outlier as Francis is, I simply can't picture something like that happening to Muhammad Ali in the prime of his career. The period of boxing that I blame for this degradation is the mid-2000s to the mid-2010s, because the transitional era of the 90s and the early 2000s was dominated by guys like Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, and Lennox Lewis, who, if we're being objective without resulting to nostalgic bias, were probably some of the most skilled heavyweights in history. They were followed by an at the time seemingly endless period of dominance of the robotic Klitschko brothers, specifically Vladimir Klitschko, who with the help of the late great trainer Emanuel Stewart developed an exploitative boxing style that centered around size, which was defined by the constant intermittent jabbing and clinching to neutralize the offense of a usually much smaller opponent, something that was clearly intended to keep the chinny Vladimir out of dangerous exchanges and was mind-numbingly boring to watch. watch.
Him and his brother made boxing very boring, to be honest with you. Because now, you know, the boxing viewers and people don't really follow boxing. You know, if you walk out in the street and ask who's the world champion right now, they can't tell you.
And this was followed by the modern era of giants that we're in now, which until recently had three standout fighters in Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, and Deontay Wilder. And I would argue that this has been the least talented and experienced crop of heavyweights that we have seen to date, with both Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder starting to train in boxing extremely late at 18 and 20 years old, and then proceeding to learn on the job while using their innate size, power, and athletic ability as a crutch. And in an ironic twist of fate, almost as if to say, here, I know you'll continue what I started, it was Vladimir Klitschko himself who passed the crown to Joshua after being retired by him in a hard-fought back-and-forth match in 2017 that saw them both go down, Klitschko in the 5th and Joshua in the following round, until the referee was forced to stop the fight when Klitschko was unable to answer a barrage of punches against the ropes at 2 minutes and 25 seconds of the 11th.
I finished my career
on your
my
feet. Yep.
Most importantly, I knew I'm passing the torch to the younger, better, stronger man.
And it was in this fight that the flaws in Joshua's skills that he would continue to have his whole career reared their head to the general public. He was a plodding fighter with basic footwork and a lack of head movement. And a 41-year-old Klitschko, who was thoroughly outboxed a year and a half prior by Tyson Fury, was able to give him all that he could handle. And on paper, AJ should have been a nightmare matchup for Vlad, as he was much younger, just as big if not bigger, stronger, and possessed incredible knockout power. Klitschko's kryptonite has always been boxers who could get him to go blow for blow by neutralizing his clinching either through pure size and power or by getting to his chin early. For example, when he was annihilated in 2 rounds by Corey Sanders, a fight that had to be avenged by his older brother Vitaly, who had a better chin and a more aggressive style. And if he didn't panic and become sloppy and reckless when he was unable to impose his will, he'd become extremely gun-shy, like he did against Tyson Fury. And if you weren't there for the Klitschko era, but these qualities are sounding oddly familiar, that's because in a lot of ways, Anthony Joshua is the British Vladimir Klitschko, but with a lot less skill, which is why he was barely able to beat him even with a 14-year age difference and a home field advantage. And it would only take 2 more years for Joshua to really get exposed by Andy Ruiz Jr. in his United States debut. Ruiz was a mid-level boxer who was a late replacement for Jarrell Big Baby Miller, who had tested positive for a banned substance. Joshua was a 25-1 favorite, and the physical contrast between the two was absolutely absurd. A 6'6" Adonis who looked like he was carved out of marble, towering over a 6'2" listed but likely closer to 6 foot tall Ruiz. But Ruiz was fearless, aggressive, had a hard punch, and a semblance of head movement, which proved to be kryptonite for Joshua, who even after dropping Ruiz was waved off in the 7th round after being on the receiving end of 4 knockdowns. What I saw in this fight convinced me that Joshua only looked good when his opponents let him look good, and he would always fall victim to a certain type of fighter. He looked panicked, disoriented, and shell-shocked when he realized that Ruiz could hurt him. And that panic had him making stupid decisions and finding himself in unnecessary exchanges. Some might look at that as mental strength or being a warrior, but to me that is a lack of composure under pressure. And that mental ability to not become flustered in these types of situations is exactly what separates the great fighters from the good ones. Some call that having that dog in them. I simply call it elite fight IQ, and it's not something that can just be taught at this stage of Joshua's career. In his rematch with an even fatter and clearly undertrained Ruiz, Joshua employed a jab-heavy tactic without really committing to his punches for fear of another firefight, something that again was very reminiscent of Vladimir Klitschko. A lot of credit has to be given to Joshua's promoter Eddie Hearn in Matchroom Boxing, as well as his manager Freddie Cunningham. In spite of his limited skills, they have handled his career perfectly, molding him into one of the biggest stars in boxing. And every setback so far has been met with a successful restart and rebrand. After Ruiz, he was rebranded as a humbled but very skilled boxer that simply got too careless but was now going back to his roots.
I don't hide from any situation. I feel like I could, seriously, you could fill out this arena here and I could talk about all my losses in life. And I'm proud of them. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to shy away from them anyway.
After his back-to-back losses to Usyk just 2 years later, he was rebranded as a changed man that was now finally dialed in and on a mission for redemption. His bizarre rant and temper tantrum after his 3rd loss was looked at as a temporary lapse in an otherwise amazing character, a byproduct of being too passionate.
Oh, man. Oh.
And after his recent and at least a little bit predictable loss to Daniel Dubois, here we are again.
What a roller coaster journey. But you know what the problem is that it's far from over yet. You know, we've done it once, we've done it twice. Doing it a third time hasn't been easy, but I believe it's something I can achieve. It's about making the right steps forward, working hard, improving, and it's got to come from here more than anything.
Since the very beginning of his career, Anthony Joshua has been very favored by boxing. You may have heard that he was an Olympic gold medalist, but what's often not mentioned is that many feel that he was gifted 2 decisions, one of which would have disqualified him from winning any medals had he not been given the victory. The other was in the finals. The opponents were Cuban and Italian, and the 2012 Olympic Games were held in London. You do with that information what you will. This was what blew the doors open for his career. Just like Oscar De La Hoya in America, he was the British Golden Boy. Barely months after turning pro in 2013, he was appointed member of the British Empire for his services in boxing, and he quickly became recognized as one of the most marketable athletes in the world and was given endorsement deals worth huge money like Under Armour and Beats by Dre. I'm saying that to say his skills were never what made him stand out. He was special when it came to marketability and earning potential, but he was never a special fighter. But the thing that Joshua is missing the most is what I already touched upon earlier. He doesn't have grit and mental toughness. He panics, folds under pressure, and sometimes doesn't believe in himself at all. He doesn't have that extra gear that allows him to bite down on his mouthpiece and do what he has to win. He folded against Ruiz, he folded against Usyk, and he folded against Dubois. He threw a full-blown tantrum after his second loss to Usyk because he believed that since he worked slightly harder in camp and had a slightly different approach and had a couple of good moments, he deserved the victory because that's what he's used to. While Usyk was still being the more aggressive fighter in the championship rounds, even though he was clearly winning the fight and was the champion. He doesn't know what it's like to really want something, while very few believe in you and be willing to do anything and put everything on the line in order to get it. That mentality is simply not in him because he's been privileged his whole career. And the narrative that he does, well, that is the Anthony Joshua lie. Thanks for watching. Like the video if you like it, dislike if you don't, and let me know what you think about my take in the comments down below. If you're interested in more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell next to it. And if you would like to support my channel further and get special privileges like early access to videos and highlighted comments, hit the join button on the channel homepage if you're on Android or desktop, or the link in the description if you're on iOS. Thanks for watching.
I thought he had the fight 1 in the 3rd round, but clearly you can see the home cooking with the referee, man. They did everything in their power to make AJ recovery. All the billboards I'm seeing is all AJ. You know, he's a big undercard. They wrote Dubois off, and I'm happy he didn't just get a win. I'm happy that he knocked AJ the f out the way he did.